Lead the Way podcast. Morgan Ramsey, founder and CEO of LedeWire. John Wise, the chief marketing officer of LedeWire. Just going to dive in. I mean, what is LedeWire, Morgan, and why does it exist?
Yeah, I mean, it's like hard to distill it down into like a short little soundbite. But essentially, we wanted to build a platform to help creators of content, writers, journalists, publishers. We wanted a way to allow them to self-publish their content and allow readers to have better access to information. We built a micropayments-based platform that's going to give readers a wallet and a way to access content that's sitting behind a paywall without having to sign up for a new account and sign up for a subscription every time they want to read something.
I feel like most people get that right away. They understand when you say this is an alternative to having to subscribe to something. Every time I mention that to somebody, they get it. It's instant. Like everyone's like, I have 10 subscriptions, or I wanted to read this thing the other day. It asked me to subscribe. So I was like, screw it. I'm not reading it. I'm moving on to something else. But what is a micropayment? I mean, that might confuse people from time.
Yeah. And that's, and honestly, I think people have different definitions for this. Sometimes you say micropayments and people are like, oh, it's a fraction of a penny, right? And I don't think that's really what we're going for. I think honestly, and John and I have talked about this a lot, and he can kind of expound on this a little bit. But I think what we're going for are those sort of higher value pieces of content, right? And the use case that we always fall back on is, like I have conversations with friends, like we've got text chains going, and all the time it happens where somebody shares a story in one of those chat rooms, or somebody shoots me a text and they're like, hey, check out this story. This is a conversation we were just having. And you're like, God, I would love to read that, but I've got too many subscriptions already. I'm not signing up for another subscription. Even if it's like you get the introductory rate of $1 a month or whatever it is, like it's just annoying to have to like put your information in, sign up for a new account every time you want to read a single article, right? And we always forget that we signed up for a subscription, and then you forget, and then, all of a sudden you get hit with a bill like a couple months later and you're like, oh God, I forgot to cancel that thing. This is just kind of like no commitments. Like, let's just give people better access to high quality information. And in the process, we're supporting media companies, we're supporting journalists, we're supporting independent writers, content creators that are doing the work that we think is really valuable to the world.
The way that's laid out, it's an incredible consumer tool. But as a tool for a creator, a journalist, a podcaster, a video creator, somebody who's making their living on social media, how does it benefit them? Because I feel like it actually can change the way that people make money by creating content.
Well, and this is another thing that John and I have talked about a lot. Right now, the internet's built on sort of two monetization models, right, for content. It's either the full subscription model, or it is this advertising-based model. And the advertising-based model has been built around like, let's get as many eyeballs in front of your content as possible, and then try and sell ad space to advertisers that want to access your audience. On the one hand, that model I think has been reasonably successful, and people have made a decent amount of money being advertisers. But it's kind of led to this world that we live in, where there's a lot of sort of clickbaity content, where you're just focused on like, how do you get people to click through your content? How do you drive more traffic to your site? And that kind of has promoted this like sort of inflammatory junk content that, just like the headline clickbait type stuff that I think a lot of us see as potentially problematic. We were trying to build a solution that can support people that are doing more sort of robust and thoughtful work. We want to make like the conversation that we're having more intelligent. Give people that are doing like real hard work. We want to have another way to support them. What we're trying to do is introduce that third monetization model that doesn't exist right now. More and more, you're seeing writers move independently. I mean, there's a reason that Substack has been so successful, or other platforms like Substack. I mean, there's Medium, there's Beehive, like there's lots of newsletter platforms out there, tons of sort of small creator platforms that have come up. Lots of people want to move independently, and I think that's a great thing. But with that, the landscape becomes a lot more crowded. There's a lot of people trying to either get those advertising dollars, or a lot of people trying to get your subscription dollars, and I think we're all feeling that, right? There's a subscription for just about everything nowadays. Ultimately, you kind of reach this saturation point where you're like, I love Substack, and I like this writer a lot, but I just don't know if I can take any more subscription. My monthly budget is maxed out.
We've never lived in a subscription world. We go to the grocery store for subscriptions. Yeah, there's subscription companies now, people that want to subscribe, but like you go buy what you need, when you need it, when you want it. Our brains are wired that way. Committing to something, who knows if we're going to want to buy this guy's work next month? Yeah. What if he says something between now and then that I don't agree with, or I don't like, or I don't like his perspective anymore, or I don't have any money to pay for it next time? Like committing to stuff is just not how our brains are wired.
Yeah, and I also think about, like, suppose somebody's out there breaks the next Watergate story, something like that. Does like really hard investigative journalism, and millions of people want to read that story. There should be a way for that story to go viral and for that writer to make a ton of money on it. Because he did some hard work and he did, broke a story that is like really valuable for the country, for humanity to have access to. Like, that's what we want to support. Like, giving those writers a way to maintain the rights to their IP and make money off of it when they break a story that's really important that a lot of people want to read and want to get behind.
Yeah, we're saying no more subscriptions, but then when you want to get into a LedeWire story, you do have to commit that, hey, I want to set up an account. You don't have to commit to any payments outside of the one story that you want to check out. But how do you convince people that this is not a subscription? How do you convince people that this is something different? And how do we get them to do it? Because I know that's the one thing, I know we stress about that a lot. And I know it's one of the challenges we're facing as a company is like, how do we convince people this is also not a subscription? This is going to give you access to all kinds of things and you only buy them when you want them. But how do we get that over that first hurdle?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things is that there's a little bit of a push coming from the subscription model. In the people that I've been talking with, there's the sense that the subscription hovers right around that quality value balance where it's like just good enough and you're just getting enough. Like I think about Netflix as an example. It's so hard to cancel it because you're getting like just enough to justify that whatever it is now, like $20 a month. Every time I go on, it feels like it's higher. So I think there's a little bit of that realization that when you have a subscription, you're getting like just barely enough to justify it, but nothing that really like blows you out of the water. That they're struggling for those big kind of tentpole hits in the video subscription analogy. I think the thing that is really interesting to me when it comes to this idea is something in the network effect, where somebody that you trust and you trust their opinion sends you an article, you're like, well, I'm not going to like subscribe to this person forever. I might have issues with this media outlet, this person, this creator, but I definitely want to read that because somebody I trust sent it to me. So for me, it's not necessarily LedeWire saying, hey, this is the value you're going to get from just reading this one article. It's somebody in your network that you trust that might have a different point of view or a different perspective that says, okay, are you willing to pay a quarter to read this point of view that I think you value? That to me feels like when I've been talking to people about this idea, it's really where it starts to hit.
I think that is such an important point and one of the main reasons why we wanted to do this. I mean, we all see this sort of polarization. Like, it just, take our political discourse. Like, we all see the polarization, right? And I think that's because we live in this social media driven world, right? Like, we all kind of go to our social media feeds. Social media is built to kind of feed you the same opinion over and over again because it knows what you like. And so we kind of live in this echo chamber now. We wanted to get people out of that echo chamber. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to have a conversation with people that you trust who might have a different point of view from you, right? Like my father-in-law and I have different political opinions about a lot of topics. He sends me articles all the time over text, and I'm like, man, I would love to read this, but I'm not signing up for this rag. But if there were a way for me to access those stories, like, yeah, like just an easy, seamless way for me to say, you know what, like I want access to this one story. Let me go in and do it. Like, I get a better sense of his point of view. I get a better sense of why he disagrees with me on this topic. And I think that could be like just a really powerful thing, right? And like something that we all desperately need right now.
Yeah, and I think to build on that, I mean, people are, I think, actively looking to break out of the echo chambers that they found themselves in with social and even with subscriptions. Like if you subscribe to a media outlet, you're kind of getting their line. And I think people are looking for ways to break out with that, whether it's something like the Ground News app, which shows biases on both sides and factuality of every media piece you read. I think adding to that, the idea that like local news is going away. Mm-hmm. And I think I read a stat that, over 50 million Americans are living in a local news desert where there's either 0 or 1 outlet covering things in their immediate community that are important to them. So, and I think in addition to the big national politics where trust is just fallen off a cliff, I think this can really help people get engaged with local news where, it might not be worth subscribing or just following them on social and getting what they want to put out, but picking and choosing some of those things that are of interest to you. Like, I really would love to know what's going on in a city council meeting in different neighborhoods of Brooklyn. I'm not getting that on social because the algorithm doesn't send it to me. There are no journalists that are covering that with a subscription model that are worth it for me to do that. But that's something that I think is really, it's valuable and it's missing, which I think is a reason why people are really responding to this proposition.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, and I actually looked up those stats this morning. I was just kind of looking at it, and It's something like 1/3 of total newspapers have gone out of business since 2005 in the U.S. 1/3.
Can this tool save local newspapers? I mean, I get it, but like there's towns that I have lived in previously where I still care about what goes on there, my hometown being one of them. I'm not subscribing to the local paper there. There's no way because I don't care that much, but time to time I'm like, I'll see a story, a headline, and they want to charge me a subscription. I feel like they're missing a huge market here, and can this help them stay in business?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think time will tell, right? I mean, obviously, like I don't think this is a magic bullet that's like all of a sudden, hey, local news is back, like we saved it. I don't think it's that, but I think it's another monetization channel, and it's a way for them to access an audience that, like you said, has kind of been unreachable up to this point. Right? Like there are people, you grew up in North Carolina, smaller town in North Carolina. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia. I still have ties to Richmond and I still care about what's going on in Richmond. And like when an important story hits, like I'd love to be able to see what the local coverage says because like I don't want to have to trust the New York Times for every bit of local coverage that I'm getting. And that's kind of the direction that we're headed is like the local time, the New York Times or, the Washington Post. Those are going to be like the only outfits in business in a few years if we keep going down this road.
Well, it's interesting. There's a guy where I live now. There's a guy, he's a realtor in town. And to sell houses, he started reporting the news. I love this guy. I'm like, this guy's breaking stories. And then I get the notification later from our paper, our local paper here in town. I'm like, I already heard this from this local guy. He's not getting paid anything for it. He's doing it to promote himself as a realtor in town. And this is a guy that knows what's going on here locally. And you can trust him. I think he's great at it. And I'd pay him $1. I'd pay him $1, or 50 cents or 25 cents if I just had to click on it to learn about this new development or traffic infrastructure. I mean, it's wild how much he goes to all the meetings now. Like this guy he looks like a reporter, he talks like a reporter. So maybe it doesn't save the papers, but maybe it gives a way for local individuals to say, I really care about this town. I want people to know what's going on. And I can spend the time now doing this. Now he's doing it as marketing for his real estate business, but someone else who could probably spend more time on it because they don't have to actually go out and sell houses as well. I feel like it wouldn't take that much if you made a couple $100 a day, just a couple $100 paying you, with a local audience following you. I feel like you could make a living really quickly.
And I think it's also it's not that new of behavior to engineer. People pay for what they want in so many different realms of life. Even video gaming, like micropayments in video games have changed the way that the industry operates. And it's made it a lot more engaging for the people who are involved in it. And they have a lot more control. To build that analogy out, they're not waiting.
Are you a gamer, John? I maybe didn't know that about you.
I used to be. Not to the point where I would be doing anything with microtransactions. I find that when I'm on those kind of games, I get smoked by a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Right away.
I guess, are we socialized, though, for micropayments through video games? Because I know video games are huge. And I know that it's like probably the biggest entertainment industry thing there is. It's bigger than, I don't want to say it's bigger than Netflix and YouTube, but I know the gaming industry is massive and they're buying stuff all the time. They're making tons of money. I see the valuations of these companies. So maybe we are socialized. Maybe this generation of gamers is socialized to the micropayments. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think a younger generation definitely is. And it's interesting because it's not either or, right? They can have a subscription to a service. They can be on social to get all the free gaming information and to be part of those communities, but also having the option to buy that one knife in Counter-Strike that they, that they really love, that they heard about on social. So, and I think, in my world, anything that gives consumers more control is generally a good thing, as long as a brand you're responsible with how we use that. And I think one of the challenges with the subscription model alone is that if it's really your only option, it doesn't necessarily serve the end consumer. Right, it's set up to serve the companies that are putting those up. So I think having that as another option is great, and the fact that it is seeded by gamers is probably a good thing when we start to think about the younger generation that is like probably getting a lot of their news over social alone, which is I think we probably recognize like not a great thing out there. So I think there's definitely that behavior that's been ingrained. And to your point, like every time you go to the grocery store, you're picking out exactly what you want. I think it's kind of like a new behavior that's built on a very old one.
Right. I think it's not natural to think we have to commit to something long term. In fact, it's burdensome. I mean, we have to make insurance payments. That's one of the things, or rent, or a mortgage, or the types of cost. And if you think about those costs, those are generally stressful for people. That we have to commit to this thing and we have to do it. And maybe it's stressful. Like, I don't want to get into people's financials and things like that, but those have typically been the things like the bills. We're committed to taxes every year. Like, you hear people talk about that stuff, and it's not a positive experience. No one says, "Oh, I'm so excited to pay my mortgage again next month." And that's what a subscription becomes, is a mortgage. It's a rent payment every month for something. It puts pressure on us to keep up with whether we want to continue reading it or not. It puts pressure on the creator or the journalist to put out good content so that we don't say, "Oh my God, I paid that guy $5 a month and it's really gone downhill because he's trying to put out 4 articles a month, and he's really only got 2 articles worth of information to put out there." It'd be so much better if he could focus on those 2 articles and make them really, really good and make just as much money doing the 2 versus spreading himself thin just to provide for their subscribers. That being said, Morgan, it's like everyone asked me about Substack, and you mentioned Substack, and are we competing against Substack? And I don't think we're competing against Substack. I think this is just another way.
Just to your point, I think that's one bit of feedback that we've heard pretty consistently. Like when we talk to writers, I've actually spoken to a few writers that are like, yeah, I've looked at creating my own Substack or creating a subscription service, but I stayed away from it because I didn't want to have to get on that subscription, that cadence, right? Like where I've got to put out 4 articles a week to justify the value of my subscription. And if I don't keep up with that 4 articles a week, I start losing subscribers. And that's just, it becomes a little bit of a grind where it's like, I think a lot of writers, a lot of independent journalists want to just focus on the stories that they think are really important. And if that takes them a week to write that story, like they should be allowed to take a week to write that story and have it hit a lot harder and have it connect with a broader audience, right? And like we're just trying to give them a tool to connect with the broader audience and to lower that hurdle for somebody new who maybe hasn't heard of them or doesn't have the money to be a full subscriber to access that one article when it's like really like a topic that they care about.
Well, one of the things, so I know from the idea, and we could talk origin story, but maybe we'd get back to that in a little while. This idea, everyone you talk, I haven't had a single person that I said, "Oh, that's a bad idea." Right. We maybe get some people that are like, "Oh, somebody tried this or somebody tried that." And when we get down to it, I think the problem was, or the problem other people have run into is they've made it complicated, or it's, focused on this, or it's Bitcoin or whatever, and it scares people off. And we just went the simplest route in our idea, and it blows my mind that there's no one else out there that has said, let's just do it simple and make it easy for everyone. Everyone's tried to focus on this other thing.
I think to just to put a point on that, like I've seen a couple attempts at something like this. A lot of them are sort of crypto focused, and let's be honest, like it's just hard to connect with like a really broad audience. And then I've seen a couple.
Even if it's easy with crypto, the second everyone thinks that there's that they don't understand it, and so they run away, or they're just like seeing a subscription.
Don't get me wrong. Like I'm a big proponent of crypto. Like I mean, or at least of Bitcoin and decentralization and censorship resistant systems. Like I get the appeal there. I'm not saying anything negative about that. I just think, when we really started looking at this, like building like a purely crypto-based system, like you're kind of building a system for scarcity, like NFTs and things like that. Basically, we wanted to allow writers or content creators to connect with the broadest audience possible, right? And so we had to design our system to be like simple, seamless user experience that allows those creators to connect with the broadest audience possible. The other thing that I think is like a really important point about like what's been tried in the past, like I don't think anybody is really going to consume all of their news or all of their content this way, right? I think we have to be realistic about that. Like, if you are a big reader of the news, you're going to subscribe to a newspaper. You're going to subscribe to the New York Times. You're going to subscribe to, the Wall Street Journal or whatever your publication of choice is, and you should. That is the way you should consume most of your news, and I hope that people get most of their news that way. What we are really focused on are like the high value pieces of content that people really care about, really want to access, but maybe, it just works better as part of a conversation, or works better as like sort of a one-off when you're really interested in diving deeper into a topic. That's what I think where this use case comes into play, and where it can be really valuable. It also potentially allows an independent writer who's just starting out, that maybe doesn't have the name recognition of somebody that's been around for a long time and has 100,000 subscribers or whatever it is, allows those new independent journalists who may be doing really good work to connect with a broader audience and like sort of lower the bar for that first taste, that first introduction and connection with a new reader who might over time keep coming back and decide, you know what, I'm spending more money just buying single articles. I'm going to become a full subscriber. So if we can help lower that bar and convert, more readers to becoming full subscribers, like that's a win for us too. Like I think that's part of our mission as well.
Well, I think it's really easy for people to grasp that part of it, in paying for what you want versus having to subscribe. Having worked at a number of companies and startups and been a part of a lot of new ideas, this is probably the most easy one for people to say, you've solved a problem for me on both sides of this marketplace. We've solved a problem for the consumer. We've solved a problem for the creator. This thing has a much bigger implication for where the world is heading as well, which maybe we didn't see as clearly from the beginning, and it wasn't the seed of the idea for why to do this. But I think this AI revolution that is taking over how we consume the internet and how we, it's a search-based internet, as you like to say, Morgan.
Yeah.
This changes everything. And being able to have a very simple wall around your content, you can protect your IP and you can protect who's scraping it and who's using it. So, I mean, did we backdoor into that? Was that the idea all along? I mean, how did this happen that this actually has the potential to protect, not protect, because we embrace AI. I think at this company, we think it's a tool that's useful and going to provide a lot of good in the world and allow a lot of good stuff. A Google search is not what it used to be. You get a summary now. You don't get a search link. And how does this sort of fit into that equation?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's one, did we backdoor into this? I mean, maybe on some level. I think what we were really focused on when we first started talking about this, which, we've been
I like to think we're geniuses and we had this idea.
Yeah, we just knew where the world was going.
And we knew we were going to be up against this entire revolution of the internet. But that's not true. I mean, not the genius part, but the part about this idea being built for that. But as we've gotten into it, obviously we were aware it was there and wanted to work within that framework, but now understanding how powerful it can be.
Yeah, I think what we didn't appreciate was how fast this was going to happen. Right. And that was, I just put up a blog post. You can read it at LedeWire.com if you want to check it out. But I just put up a blog post. Matthew Prince, who works at Cloudflare, was talking about this just the other day, just about how fast AI-derived search results have overtaken Google search, right? Like just the traditional Google search where Google sent you to a website when you cared about a topic. A few years back, it was something like, they crawled 2 pages for every 1 visitor that they sent to a website. Now that's up to something like 18-1 for Google, but for Anthropic, it's like 60,000. They crawl 60,000 pages for every 1 visitor they send to a website. That rate of change, and I think that's up from 6,000 6 months ago. It was, just the rate of change on this is just so massive. Like the AI has become the biggest reader of the internet. That's all, like most of the traffic that all these sites are seeing. So going back to our original discussion about like the monetization models that exist on the internet. That advertising-based model where you throw up free content and then hope you can drive as many eyeballs to your site as possible, like I see that being incredibly challenged over the next couple of years, right? And so where does that take the world?
You think it's years? You think we still have years left of that? Because I feel it's moving even quicker than that.
Oh, I've spoken to a couple of guys who are like, yeah, I've seen my advertising revenue just fall off a cliff. These are like bloggers, things like that. They're the first ones feeling this, right? Like the bloggers who are standing up free content. That was like, I don't know if you guys remember back in like 2008, blogging was like, that was the thing, right? And those guys were making a pretty good living. And then now, fast forward 12, or whatever, 17 years, and it's hard to see how that business is just like putting up free content and hoping you can get some advertising dollars for it. Hard to see how that business survives unless you are like, a real media property where you have sort of organic visitors on a regular basis anyway. But I think even for those models, like we're seeing, like they're pretty challenged, right? Like the social media companies are driving less traffic to news sites. Search is clearly driving a lot less traffic to news sites. So I think what that means is more information needs to go behind a paywall. I think this is part of I don't want to get into, dissecting the Cloudflare solution, but I think this is part of what they're seeing. And I think we're thinking about this in a very similar way. I think more information is going to need to go behind some form of a paywall, right? And
when you say that, though, you don't necessarily mean we have to pay a lot of money. I think, I know.
No, I think it's just
about like how cheap could it actually be and still protect and provide revenue.
I think more than anything, when I say it has to go behind a paywall, it's really just about protecting IP, right? Like if you're out there doing work, just standing it up for free and hoping that advertisers are going to pay you for that, like it's just a harder and harder game, and it's probably not going to be a viable business model for a whole lot longer, for at least for small independent players. So they're going to have to find a different solution if they want to continue making a living being a content creator, being an independent writer, being an independent video producer. So I think that's going to provide a drastic change, or it's going to drive a drastic change. And I think information is going to have to be protected in some form or fashion. We started thinking about this for like all the reasons that we've spoken about, but I think our solution is actually like a really elegant way for these creators to, one, protect their IP, to just exchange value for value, right? Like if you can convince readers that the content that you're putting out is valuable, and readers see value in what you're doing, I think that like we're providing a pretty elegant solution for them to get paid for the value that they're providing to their readers and to their audience.
And I think, one thing I've seen a lot of my career is our consumer brands try as hard as they can to back themselves into purpose. Mm-hmm. Like we have a new sneaker or a new fitness tracker or a new beer, and let's try to find the thing that we can talk about that's bigger than that product function. And, marketers contort themselves to figure out these like bigger stories and these bigger purposes. I think for this company, it's interesting that it's kind of built into the fabric of the company, giving more access and more control to the people who are creating credible, high quality news and the people who want to buy that.
Yep.
And I think where it goes wrong is when purpose is like a strategy and not a deeply embedded value. Mm-hmm. And I think with LedeWire, even going back to the original origin story in Afghanistan, this access to news that was stifled in that situation really made an impact on you. And so it eventually became this product proposition versus having this way to make money that you want to figure out how to talk about in a way that's bigger than just the product itself. I think with us, again, that intrinsic access to better quality news that is important, and it's missing out there. I do think from the people I've talked to, they discern that pretty immediately versus having to do the marketing trickery to like figure out how to talk about a product in a way that feels like it's actually purposeful. I think Sam Altman just said it recently, missionaries beat mercenaries all the time. And I feel like that sets us up well, given where some of these other platforms are starting to play.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, John, because I really like that. We have a great origin story with why this came to be. And Morgan, it's your story, but living in Afghanistan, recognizing that the biggest problem in the Middle East is access to good information. And that sort of set the stage for this. But you do, John, I like what you're talking about, because I think it's really important that we didn't necessarily set out to build this business to make a ton of money. We set out to build this business because we saw that this was something that was necessary. Obviously, you want to make money with a business so you can build the business and grow and actually solve the problem you're out to solve. But the goal was better access to good information, because tons of access to shitty information. We know that. But when you're building a brand, like how do we build that into the brand that we're building? Like how do we let people know that that's actually why we exist? And I know that that's something we're constantly trying to solve, and we want to solve. It's one of the reasons we would sit and record ourselves having a conversation about it, is because we want people to understand transparently what we're up to, why we're doing it, and even how we're doing it. But why is it important for people to understand there's a real mission behind this company?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think a big part of it is the show don't tell approach. Like even I think about over the years, every time there was an article that either I wanted to access, it could be local news, it could be niche interest, it could be, like we said, something a friend sent, and you hit that paywall and then you move on with your life. And think about how many times that has happened. Just give yourself a time for like the past year. Right, like what access?
I probably think of 2 or 3 instances yesterday where
literally this morning
I moved on.
This morning I probably found 3 that I would be willing to pay a quarter for each and every one of those pieces of information, and then adding that over the course of a year, over the course of several years. Like I wish this had been around. So I think for me, making it very personal in that sense does a lot versus, obviously the rational side of it makes sense when we lay it all out. But even just thinking of those articles that I'm not seeing, or those perspectives from good friends who I might have a different point of view on, I've missed those in the way that I'm forming my view on the world over the last several election cycles. And that's definitely not a good thing. So for me, it's really imagine this existed as a part of your life. And every time you see one of those paywalls, you have a way to throw 50 cents in a jar and get over it. It kind of works on its own. Again, versus some of the tricks that we marketing folk have to use. I think it not necessarily solves itself, but I think the value is self-evident.
Well, I know we're very ambitious and aspirational about what this company can be and how it can actually be a tool for just about anyone putting content on the internet in any form. And we're building all kinds of pieces to make that possible. It's not a surprise that we've sort of started with journalists and politics and financial writers. And one of those writers is Chris Saliza, who ran a test for us. And we're still early stages. We're still in beta with LedeWire. But Chris is an independent journalist who he's very transparent and open about how hard it is, how much of a grind it is. We watched, it was him and Tara Palmieri talking about just how the New York Times had done the profile on her and her going independent and just how hard it is to make a living and how important this, like a tool like this could be. But how did the test go, Morgan? What did we get from this first test with Chris, him putting this out to his subscribers and just kind of walk us through that? Because he's huge on Substack. He makes a good living on Substack. He's successful, as hard as it is. He's found a way to make it work for him and taken his career from the Washington Post and CNN and turned it into a very good independent career, doing good work as a journalist. I think a lot of people that are thinking about becoming independent journalists look up to him and say, how have you done this? How have you pulled this off? Tara being one of them. I think we're lucky that he was instantly saw the value that a tool like this would bring to the table and said, whatever you guys need, I want to work with you. I want to help you make this thing work. We ran a test with him. What did we learn from that?
Yeah, I mean, and I will say, like, Chris has been sort of an awesome partner in this, because he's experiencing these issues that we're talking about firsthand, right? I mean, he left CNN, so then he has to start from scratch. And he was like, well, I'm a TV personality. I've been around. He's one of the hardest working men in journalism. He covers politics. He has built up a meaningful audience over the years, but, still, and this is the case for everybody on Substack, the vast majority of his audience is free subscribers, and he has a good number of paying subscribers, but it's taken him a couple years and a lot of really hard work. And so he sees this problem firsthand. He sees how hard it is to build an audience. And so he's been really supportive of what we're doing. I think he also is somebody who he is trying to cover political issues from an impartial, unbiased angle. And that's really hard to do in this day and age. And he said to me a few times, he's like, listen, if I just went out and trash Donald Trump with everything I put out, I'd probably have a bigger audience, but that's not the journalist that I want to be. And so I think he really fits the mantra of like the people that we're trying to support, right? Like the people that are trying to be honest with their reporting and just cover issues in an honest and thoughtful way. So he's been a fantastic partner. We ran a very limited test with him, right? And the main point of the test was like, can we get people through our checkout process without the whole system breaking down? So he only sent it out to about 100 of his subscribers, but we managed to get people through the checkout process. It worked. The tech didn't break. The plan from here is to kind of keep scaling that up and to make sure that like the system is sound and robust. I think the next test we'll run will just be sending out another story to a larger audience. We went from 100. We'll probably do 500 to 1,000 on the next one. And then I think the next step in the process would be allowing Chris to, we managed a lot of the process for him in the first test. The next step in the process will be allowing him to publish his own stories. And then at that point, we'll feel like we have a good end-to-end solution for independent writers, and we can start, expanding the number of writers that we have publishing with us. So we're still very early days, but so far so good. We haven't really fallen down. We learned some things about the system that we needed to learn, and found a couple small bugs. That's the reason you do these things. You just throw them out into the wild and see what breaks, because all the testing we do internally can never really replicate the real world scenarios that you're going to see. But I feel pretty good about where we are, and I feel really good about having Chris as a partner in all of this. Looking forward to scaling it up. I think after we get the independent publishing platform going, then we're going to sort of work on a solution for media companies where we can be a transactional layer that sits with media companies. So some of the issues we were talking about where media companies are looking for new revenue streams, we're trying to provide a resource for that as well. And then we'll have I think we'll have a nice content offering for our clients that we will just be looking to grow over the next couple of years.
I think it's really cool that you wanted to do these conversations on video, because these are the same conversations we're having without a camera rolling, and how we're figuring out how to build this company along the way. I think it's exciting. I know Chris said he would jump on and do one of these with us. So looking forward to him being in these future conversations. One of the things we want to accomplish is to transparently build this company. If we're going to talk about good and great information, I think transparency is huge. I think it's an important part of the industry, and I think we believe in it. And so we're going to put the good and the bad out there with this podcast. I think We want to talk to independent journalists that are out there and how they're making it, what they have going on, independent creators. So if anybody's watching this, find a way to get in touch with us. We'd like to have a conversation with you and do this with you as well. John, I think we're trying to build a brand that resonates with people. And I think we want to get that heart and soul, that transparency, everything that we're talking about. I think we want that to show up in the brand. And this brand will evolve as this thing builds. And I think we want to put that out there as well.
I think the whole point of having these conversations, we're just trying to learn as much as possible, right? Like we're trying to learn from the people that we want to work with what makes them tick and what they need, right? And how we can support them. I think we're coming at this from both the creator angle and the reader angle. I think we've got a pretty good solution for readers once this thing is fully scaled up. And we really want to just make it work for all the parties involved. So that's what we're really trying to understand this market better, and that's why we're doing this.
Yeah, and I'll say, I think the LedeWire brand will be successful when the Chris Cillizza brand is successful, or the Tara Palmieri brand, because they're really trying to build their own thing, and we need to be an avenue for them to continue to grow those. So, obviously we will have our own points of view, our own visibility, but it's really about enabling those entrepreneurial brands to build themselves in a way that makes sense by getting access to more people, putting their content out there. And again, I love the idea that if something goes big, they benefit from it. They get the lion's share of the revenue from it. So I think as our brand goes, our brand is only going to be as good as the folks that we work with and the success that they see.
Well, we'll keep putting it out there. We will share as much as we can when we can. I think we try to do these pretty regularly. This is fun. I like talking about this stuff. So we'll be back with more Lead the Way podcast very soon. Thanks, guys, for doing this today, and looking forward to doing a lot more of this.